video. My name is Cynthia. Today I've got another video presentation for the Equine Studies program at the University of Guelph. This presentation is for my equine welfare class, the use of bridles, bits, and nosebands, and their effects on the physiological and psychological well-being of our horses. Why did I choose this topic? Because everyone uses bitted bridles. Bits have been around since 2300 BC, and still today the vast majority of us, including myself, uses a bitted bridle every time we ride. However, there's a growing body of research that suggests that bridles, including bits and nosebands, can have really serious implications for equine welfare. I wanted to look into this research to see what these studies are finding and figure out how we can apply this knowledge in a way that's practical so that we can prioritize the welfare of our horses. So before I get into the research, I just want to let you know a couple of things. First, it's important for you to know that I didn't come into this research project trying to prove a particular point of view. I didn't cherry pick my research. I didn't only look for research that supported what I already did. I genuinely did the best that I could to look at every and any paper that was written on the subject of bridles, bits, and nosebands and how they relate to welfare. Then I went through all that research to summarize the findings, which is what I'm going to present to you today. So let's get into it. First off, what is the function of a bridle and its parts? A bridle holds a bit in the horse's mouth, which allows us to communicate with the horse through the use of reins. When we manipulate the bit with the reins, it puts pressures on different parts of the horse's head. The corners of the horse's mouth or the lips, the bars, hard palate, which is the roof of the mouth, the soft palate, which is the tongue, the nose of the horse, on the lower jaw, or on the poll. Where the bit acts will depend on the design of the bit. Inappropriate choice of bits or using them incorrectly can cause quite a lot of harm to the horse. Anything that causes our horses pain, injury, or suffering is a serious welfare issue. How do we know that horses experience pain? How do we know that they experience distress? They exhibit behaviors such as head tossing, tail swishing, teeth grinding. They might open their mouth to avoid the pressure from the bit. They can chew or drool excessively and maybe roll their tongues over the bit. And these are all adverse behaviors that show that the horse is not enjoying what's going on. The horse feels stressed, the horse feels pain, the horse is not comfortable, and his welfare is at stake. These behaviors are often considered to be symptoms of bad training, naughtiness in the horse, or unwillingness. But according to researchers, we need to recognize that these are signs of distress. Researchers have also found that horses wearing bits have increased heart rates, which is a commonly used indicator of stress or pain. The research has actually suggested that the majority of horses experience at least some level of discomfort due to bits. This can range from frustration or mild annoyance all the way to severe pain. A Swedish study found that horses ridden in bitted bridles have significantly more oral lesions than unridden horses. However, there was no significant difference among different kinds of bits, or when they compared horses ridden in bits to horses ridden in either hackamore or side pull bitted bridles. Horses have the right to be free from pain and injury. Horses also have the right to be free from fear, suffering, and distress. The scientific research is acknowledging that based upon physical and behavioral evidence that use of bitted bridles may infringe upon these freedoms and as such be a serious welfare issue. Now, it's often argued that only the harshest bits have the potential to cause harm, but as I just mentioned, the Swedish study found that horses ridden in any kind of bit were more prone to oral lesions than horses that were not being ridden. Having said that, bits are not all created equal. A simple snaffle bit, if it's used gently and independently of a rider's seat, is definitely a more mild, a more gentle bit. What's interesting is that a study by Randall and Wright showed that riders compensate for the use of a gentle bit, such as a snaffle, by using increased force compared to the force that they use if they're riding in a bit that they perceive to be more severe, such as a gag or a pelham. The benefits of using a gentle bit can be negated if the rider compensates by using more force. So a gentle bit is not necessarily going to be more welfare friendly. It also needs to be used in a way that's conducive to welfare. Moving on to nosebands. The functional purpose of a noseband is to enhance the effects of the bit. Noseband prevents the horse from evading the pressure caused by the bit. Now, if a noseband is tight, the horse is unable to open its mouth, and this will increase the sensitivity of the mouth. Certain disciplines, such as dressage, specifically require a horse to be submissive. Now, the intention behind this is for the horse to be a willing participant in the sport. If that's not the case, a tightly fitted noseband can take away the option to resist. So rather than being willing to perform, the horse is simply incapable of not performing. So research has found that tight nosebands can cause physical as well as emotional pain and suffering. A study has found that when tight nosebands are applied, horses are unable to express natural behaviors, including chewing, licking, and yawning. When those tight nosebands are removed, the frequency of those behaviors increases above the baseline. This is called a post-inhibitory rebound response. And what that suggests is that while the horse is wearing a tight noseband, he's being deprived of the freedom to express his natural behavior. State of deprivation, the inhibition of that freedom, is itself a welfare issue. Horses have also been found to have increased heart rates and increased eye temperature when they have no space under their nosebands. Now, something else that matters is that horses can only breathe through their noses. If the noseband is tightened excessively, the horse can experience airway restriction. They can have a more difficult time breathing. Obviously, if this is happening, especially during exercise, this can cause distress, this can cause discomfort, and that, again, is another welfare issue. As with bits, tight nosebands also have the potential to cause physical injury. So when the noseband is tightly fastened around the horse's mouth, specifically a flash noseband that goes below the bit or a drop noseband that goes in the same place, the really delicate tissues of the horse's mouth are squished against the horse's teeth. Research has shown that this can cause a significantly greater amount of oral lesions when compared to horses that have a looser noseband. Now, interestingly, using no noseband was found to also be associated with significantly more oral lesions. When the horse does not have a noseband, it's able to open its mouth and resist the pressure caused by the bit. What then happens is that the rider applies more force to the reins, pulls the bit against the horse's mouth, and that's what's causing the oral lesions. So again, this suggests that riders can compensate for more humane tack by using increased force. The way in which we use bridles in general can have an impact on welfare. If we use bridles in such a way as to lock a horse's head in position and to overly flex their head and place the head behind the vertical, we restrict the airflow through the nasopharynx and the larynx. That reduces air availability to the horse. The rider still has a responsibility to use the equipment fairly and in a way that is humane and allows horses to breathe and maintain a natural head position. So that's an overview of what the research has found relating to the traditional bridles that we're currently using. There's also studies being done to try to find more humane alternatives. There are more and more anatomically designed bridles available on the market. The Fairfax bridle has recently been released, and Steuben also makes a Freedom bridle. Both of these bridles aim to avoid putting pressure on the most sensitive part of the horse's head to eliminate pressure points. So I've not tried them, but I'm very interested in trying them. Steuben, if you want to send me one, that would be lush. But anyway, there is research being done on these bridles. These bridles are designed to keep a horse comfortable. But the study done on the Fairfax bridle showed that when horses are wearing this bridle, they actually increase their stride length or enhanced quality of movement. And that means that the horse may not only feel better, the horse can also perform better. In addition to these anatomically designed bridles, there are other innovations in terms of bitless options. So Dr. Cook is real proponents of bitless riding and bitless bridles, and he's designed a new type of bitless bridle, which is a cross-under design. There are leather straps that cross underneath a horse's jaw, and they're attached to reins, and when you take up pressure on one rein, it painlessly pushes the opposite side of the horse's head in the direction that you want to go. Several studies have been done on this particular design of bridle. Study on therapeutic riding horses that showed that when they're ridden in these cross-under Dr. Cook bitless bridles, they exhibit significantly less aversive behaviors and significantly more positive behaviors when compared to their performance in their normal bitted bridles. Another study looked at the use of these bridles for young horses that are just beginning their training. So horses being bridled for the first time, then long-reined, and finally ridden. Horses in the bitless bridles performed better than horses in bitted bridles, and they also showed less aversive behavior. Less head raising, less tail swishing, less pawing, and less mouth opening. So they were more accepting of the bitless bridle when compared to the bitted option. Additionally, when being ridden and asked to halt, horses in the bitless bridle took less time to halt than horses wearing the bit. One of the common criticisms of bitless options is that riders won't have as much control, they won't be able to stop their horses, but research suggests that even in young, untrained horses, riding in the bitless bridle still gives riders control. A study by Mills and Cook looked at the performance of horses who were switched to a bitless bridle but already trained in a bitted bridle. The study showed that horses actually didn't need any additional training to learn how to be ridden in the bitless bridle. They had 4 horses, so a small sample size, but 4 horses ridden in their normal bitted bridles to perform a dressage test. Right away, that bridle was removed and the Dr. Cook bitless bridle was put on instead, and then the horses immediately repeated the same dressage test. All of the horses improved their performance according to a high-level and very experienced dressage judge. The study didn't have a perfect design. The judge was obviously not blind, so she could tell whether the horses were bitless or bitted, and that could have introduced a little bit of bias. The bitless test was always done directly after the bitted test, so it's possible that the horses just performed better, they were better warmed up, or they already had learned part of the test, and that's why they performed better. But it's still an interesting result. It definitely requires further study. No study has yet been done on the presence of oral lesions in horses ridden in a cross-under bitless bridle, so that's an area of study that requires a little bit of attention before any claims are made that definitively say that the cross-under bitless bridle does not cause an injury to the horse. Another potential advantage of bitless bridles in general is that they allow horses to maintain a lip seal that a normal bit interrupts. Horses need to breathe through their noses. They cannot breathe through their mouths. It's been theorized that if a horse is wearing a bit, that break in the lip seal allows air to enter their digestive system, which can potentially lead to discomfort. This hasn't really been studied. It's an area that requires some attention. It is a potential benefit of the bitless bridle option. Preserving the lip seal may decrease respiratory effort, although it has yet to been studied. So again, we need to do some studies to see if this is the case. But one thing that is known is that wild horses never open their mouths when they run. We put a bit in the horse's mouth and interrupt that seal. That can potentially have negative repercussions that are not yet completely understood. So overall, it looks like the cross-under bitless bridle might be a really good option, a more humane alternative that is more conducive to promoting equine welfare when compared to a traditional bitted bridle. Moving on to nosebands, I've already mentioned that it's been found that riding with no noseband may not be as beneficial as riding with a loosely fastened noseband. General recommendation is to have at least 2 fingers of space. It's better to measure over the horse's nose rather than under, because the tissues underneath can be compressed and that can give the illusion of having more space than there actually is. More and more associations, more competition venues are becoming aware of the potential repercussions of overly tight nosebands and how they are in fact a welfare issue. In 2018, the Danish Equestrian Federation outlawed tight nosebands due to welfare issues. New Zealand is also adopting more stringent rules regarding nosebands. However, these rules do need to be enforced. So a recent Danish study showed that only 7% of competition horses had at least 2 fingers worth of space under their nosebands, and 44% had no space at all. This really highlights an ongoing need for rider education and more stringent consequences for riding in tack that violates a horse's welfare. What's the take-home message? What can we do to make our horses' lives better? Well, to me, the answer seemed pretty obvious. It seemed like a cross-under bitless bridle was the way to go. So I bought one. and I was really excited to try this on my horse, and basically she hated it. It really just didn't work for her. She was giving me some aversive behaviors. That is definitely not to say that bitless bridles don't work. It doesn't mean to say that the research is not accurate. All it means is that my mare on this particular day did not want to be ridden in the bitless bridle. I do have some ideas as to why that is, and I think I might make just a separate video to discuss it because I think it's quite interesting, but it's not really the point of this presentation. If the point is not to ride in a bitless bridle, then what is the point? To pay attention to your horse. So the methodology of these studies was to look for aversive behaviors in the horses, to look for signs that the horse is in pain, to look for signs that the horse is uncomfortable, that the horse is afraid, and to make decisions based on those signs. We need to give horses the opportunity to communicate with us. So obviously we cannot ride in tight nosebands to make sure that if they feel the need to resist the bit, that we're aware of it. We're not just locking the horse's mouth shut so they've got no chance. If we are going to ride in a bitted bridle, a gentle bit is definitely the way to go. Keep an open mind about the tack that we use and not just look to the past, not just look to tradition, to look at our horses instead, to let them play an active role in the decision-making process when it comes to our tack, when it comes to the way in which we ride them, you know. That's it for this presentation. I'm going to include all of my references down in the caption box below. So if you have any questions, you can also leave them in the comments. If you're in my welfare class, we are going to be discussing this topic during the week, so you can leave me a question in our discussion group. I've got another video coming up soon that also relates to welfare, but it's for my advanced nutrition course, looking at the correlation between nutrition and stereotypic behaviors. If you're interested in that, you can subscribe or just stay tuned. That'll be coming up in a couple of weeks. Aside from that, if you want to share this video with your horsey friends, please feel free. And thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.